darling. Those are the big ones. By the small ones, then the local ones. So here we have what happened after the coup. So this went so far that Chinese projects in Myanmar were attacked. So Chinese factories in Yangon were attacked. We still don't really know who the perpetrator was, but the military just very quickly sentenced someone to kind of show to China that, like, we care about your investments, to say it in a very simplified way. Then also there was an attempt to attack the pipelines, because there's 2 pipelines running from the Bay of Bengal all the way to China, transporting oil and gas. And there was another incident of a Chinese clothing factory being bombed. So later on, China went from a complete silence, it moved to officially supporting ASEAN, and basically the ASEAN way of solving the crisis in Myanmar. It took some time, and China also made contact with the shadow government, so we know of some phone calls and some meetings, and this basically brings us back to what is very usual in China's approach. It's the multi-layered approach. And let me just say that China is aware that although the junta claims victory, it does not really have legitimacy in the country, and it at some point will really need to look for an exit strategy. So what if there is some elections? What if the NLD is still somehow involved in the future? So from China's perspective, it's good to keep some kind of channel of communication also with the NLD. So it's basically keeping a channel with both, but leaning more towards the military junta. Since I don't have too much time, okay. And how do we know that China, although it has all these channels of communication, how do we know that it's still edging closer to recognizing the Myanmar military regime? So let me give you here a few examples. So for example, after one meeting between the military junta, the SAC, that's the official name of the junta, and the Chinese ambassador, so on Facebook, the Chinese embassy posted a message in which it called Min Aung Hlaing, who is the coup leader. They called him the leader of Myanmar. And then very soon, Chinese media followed suit. I think this was in June. So the coup happened on the 1st of February, and we can see this kind of turn in June. And then also, China invited the junta to come to a Belt and Road meeting. Then there was a special ASEAN-China meeting in Chongqing, where Myanmar military leaders were present, and so on. So here we have some evidence why China was leaning closer to Myanmar. And now to the why. Why this shift from a seemingly neutral stance to leaning towards the military. So obviously China's strategy is driven by geopolitical and strategic interests. Myanmar is a close neighbor. There is a big number of very important Belt and Road Initiative projects. And then also Myanmar is providing very important geopolitical access to the Asia Pacific. So obviously China has a strong interest to remain somehow friendly with Myanmar. In my paper, I also give, there's a table with updated Belt and Road projects. I'm not going to go into details, but basically the military was really pushing to continue these projects even after the coup. And I'm not going to go very much into the game theory model, because this was developed by my co-author basically, and in this model the player number 1 was the Chinese state, player number 2 was the Tamado, and lots of very complicated calculations. But what is important is that the conclusion of this is that immediately following the coup, when there was very big international criticism, openly supporting the military have incurred damage to the Chinese reputation, so China didn't do that. An open condemnation would have increased the chance of defensive power shock. This is something we are using in the model. So remaining strictly neutral was really not preferred. And it would have cost the government, and it basically had to take a position. So to sum this all up, as was said in the 13th National People's Congress of China, no matter how the situation evolves, China will not waver in its commitment to advancing China-Myanmar relations and will not change the course of promoting friendship and cooperation. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions after this presentation.
Judges, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Wenzao. I study in National Zhongxin University. And my thesis topic is on the influence of China's Belt and Road Initiative on ASEAN economic and trade. That's my topic. That's it. Okay, let's talk my introduction. The Belt and Road Initiative is an initiative launched by China in 2013. It aims to strengthen the infrastructure construction of countries along China's trade route and create a more efficient trade regional network. Since the Belt and Road Initiative was proposed, China has given full play to its advantages in transportation infrastructure, technology, and construction, and it increased cooperation with countries and regions along the Belt and Road Initiative. So let's talk about Belt and Road Initiative and Southeast Asia. What's the relationship between them? Southeast Asia is the focal point for the implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative, and it links the land-based belt and ocean-going road. ASEAN's base infrastructure financing needs. It's good for them. So I will take example in the last, you can see the Belt and Road Initiative. So maybe they have no train or they have no railway, but Belt and Road Initiative helps many countries in South Asia. So they have railway and they have train, and so they will link the capital Vientiane with China's southeast city of Kunming. So the China Laos Railway officially begins operations in 2021. So the China to Laos Railway is 1,035 kilometers long, with mountains and deep valleys. So you could see, take passengers from Kunming to Vientiane in just 10 hours. So they don't have to take an airplane, just take like a train, a railway, just came to the other country. The China-Laos Railway is expected to accelerate the construction of China-Laos Economic Corridor. So you can see the photo. Laos in South Asia has high-speed railway, brings bus to Thailand border town. So in September 2019, 80% of the construction work had been completed. More than 100 Chinese companies have established factories in the Thailand Chinese Industrial Zone in Rayong. So many factories at the Thailand Chinese Industrial Zone. The railway will eventually extend through Thailand and Malaysia to reach Singapore. So let's talk about benefits for Southeast Asia. The first, bridging the development gap. That's true because in country in ASEAN, they really need Belt and Road Initiative. It's good for the countries. And the second, generate jobs and income. It's really, really nice for them. Third, at the regional level, the Belt and Road Initiative could play an important role in contributing to ASEAN's desire for greater trans-ASEAN railway connectivity. But the fourth, they don't need to take an airplane, just take a railway. That's it. They can to the other country. It's good for them. It's here. Look at the picture. In 2021, I have to say that I'm really, really nice to see those people. I thought that they looks happy. They are waiting for travel to other country. And they don't need to take an airplane. It's good for them. So it's somehow untouched. Okay, let's talk about threat for Southeast Asia. The Belt and Road Initiative, not only good for them. After the Belt and Road Initiative was proposed, China has provided hundreds of billions of dollars in loans to Southeast Asian countries. It's true. Over the past 15 years, these countries are not facing capital flight because they cannot pay the loans. This is the taste the Belt and Road Initiative faces. Although China currently delays loan repayment as a solution, it solves the temporary trouble. But what about the future? Maybe 15 years later, they also cannot pay the repayment. So that's it. Good.
都可以啊。
对，哦，对对对，它是第3篇，那就你先，因为刚刚顺序。OK。然后你坐这边，这边。 Okay, thanks for the presentation. Now we move to our discussion, Professor Chen, for Christina's, you and Christina's papers.
Good afternoon. I first of all want to extend my appreciation to Wenzao University for inviting me to this. I first of all want to extend my appreciation to Wenzao University for inviting me to this exciting conference. As far as I know, this Southeast Asian Studies Conference is the only academic conference apart from Southeast Asian Studies Association's annual conference. This is the only annual conference that has been organized and held by one major university in the south of Taiwan. So I want to congratulate Wenzao University for this great achievement and contribution. I enjoy reading these two papers. One is about the Lancang-Mekong cooperation, the other is about Myanmar-China relations. I'm not a specialist. I'm far from it. I don't claim myself as a Southeast Asian studies specialist, not to mention Myanmar or Lancang-Mekong River cooperation. So here I am humbly offering my 2 cents, or even just 1 cent, regarding these two interesting papers. For IU's paper, I think first of all I want to congratulate her for working out a very solid work on literature review. I really enjoy that part. I think she has touched on a major literature concerning the subject of Lancang-Mekong cooperation. So this is a great work in reviewing the detailed history of transboundary river management. And this is my first time reading a paper regarding transboundary river management, so I learned a great deal from her paper. Okay, and then some of my comments. I think some part of your in-text citation is problematic. It's just a minor issue, minor technical issue. You can solve that instantly. Secondly, I don't think the codification of norms, of international norms into international law would be called the internalization of those norms. To me, internalization refers to the adaptation and enforcement of an international norm by a country's government in its domestic politics. So you might want to tinker with your definition regarding internalization of norms. Also, in the section, I believe that's on page 13 or 14, where you discuss China's cognitive prior. I haven't read a discussion of China's cognitive prior for a number of years, so I feel very excited. Nevertheless, I found some of your citations, those literature, are dated. You quoted some author or some books which were whose publication appeared in the 1920s or 1930s. I believe we have more recent literature for you to cite. So, for instance, the Tang Lin Li's book, where you mentioned on page 13, is, to me, is a bit too dated. So I believe there definitely are more recent literature for you to cite. Also, on the section regarding the unequal treaty, I'm not sure that we still label Imperial China's treaty with Western powers as unequal treaties. This term is, I would say, normatively related. These treaties may be called humiliating treaties, but by its nature, they are not unequal because all the articles in those treaties are actually reciprocal. Whatever Western powers gained, China gained as well. The only difference is Western powers actually practice or enforce those treaty demands, and China did not. So for instance, the British and the French and Americans demanded to establish an embassy or consulate general in Beijing back in the 1860s. They asked for it and they enforced it. China got this right too. So the British told the Chinese counterpart that, yes, okay, please have your embassy established in London. We'll welcome that. But China did not do that for 30 years. So I would say these treaties are not unequal, but it truly is very humiliating to the Qing dynasty. Actually paying indemnity or ceding territories in the 19th century, in the 1800s, they were actually quite standard practices in 19th century Europe. All right, and then your references in the, again, your discussion about China's cognitive priors are a bit dated. So I would recommend that you update, especially the literature you cite. Okay, and the next point is to prove norm subsidiarity theory, and this is your main theoretical backbone or framework, if you will. But to prove this norm subsidiarity theory, and I believe this is from Acharya, you are expected to show, number one, first of all, the differences between Western norms and the China-initiated norms in your case. Okay, the difference between the so-called universal, actually Western norms in China or Myanmar or in whatever country as a stakeholders. What are their norms that they propose, they promoted, and they want to apply on the issue of Wenzao-Mekong cooperation? Also, has other countries contested China's normative leadership role? I think those are important point of concern if you want to apply norm subsidiarity theory. Okay, I think this paper needs some empirical evidence to back up, to substantiate your main argument. So could you provide some empirical evidence that highlights China's increasing normative influence in this region, or on the matter of Wenzao-Mekong cooperation? For instance, you can provide, if there is such data, the amount of Chinese development aid in fiscal terms, in terms of numbers, for instance. I shall stop here, and I enjoy IU's paper very much. Should I continue to the next one? All right.
Go ahead.
Sure. Again, this is a great paper to read. I have a very good experience reading this paper. Christina and Dia, right? Did a good job. And as in her presentation showed, this paper has been published. So there actually isn't much for me, there isn't much room for me to say about the quality of this paper. This is a good one. So it is geopolitically beneficial for China to develop friendly relations with Myanmar's junta after the coup. I think that's a general argument of this paper. China's engagement policy is driven mainly by China's geopolitical and strategic interest in Myanmar. Myanmar is strategically important, crucial for China's BRI. So they claim that China developed close relations with junta to protect and to promote and maybe to further those BRI projects. Also, China wanted to maintain its reputation in the international community, to keep a positive image. Thirdly, military, that is security plus reputational concerns, drove China's Myanmar policy. So China appeared neutral first, then warmed up her relations with junta. this is my summary of the paper. My comment, again, just like the first paper that I comment, I think you need some empirical evidence to support or to prove your argument that China shifted from neutrality to amity or to friendliness in her relations with junta for those reasons, for strategic reasons, for political reasons, for reputational reasons. For instance, the paper suggests that China's concern about her reputation drove Beijing's decision to engage with junta. Could you provide evidence to corroborate this argument? I wouldn't say that's a claim. I would say that's an argument. And that is a major argument, very important in this paper. So I would suggest that you dig out some letters or statements or announcements from the Myanmar or from the Chinese side to corroborate this argument. Also, in your presentation, you say you have some quantitative analysis applying game theory. I did not see that in the paper. Maybe there is a section or a paragraph or maybe a couple of pages not included in this version of the paper. I would love to see them. So about the table, those projects that China maintained in Myanmar, you might want to simplify the presentation of those Chinese projects by grouping those projects into categories. Maybe it could be simple categories. So projects that were not affected by the coup at all, that constitutes one category. And projects that were temporarily stopped but resumed later on, maybe that's second category. And the third one will be total cancellation following the coup. So I think that will be easier for readers to understand better the momentum of those projects. Okay, I should stop here. It's a great read for both papers. Thank you.
Now it's my turn. From moderator to discussant. Okay, I really enjoy reading Wen's paper because she's a Taiwanese PhD student, and his presentation here should be highly encouraged because usually our Taiwanese graduate students are afraid of speaking English in front of us, so they kind of feel shy. But so it's really a challenging effort you made. So this paper, I think, is a preliminary summary of the work in progress, right? So this paper should be refined and to move into next phase of journal publication. So I'm going to give you some suggestions, maybe help you to revise it, and a couple questions that you may want to answer me, let everybody know. Okay, the first one is title. Your title is on the influence of China's BRI on ASEAN economics and trade. And I'm wondering why you confine yourself on just economics and trade. Because China-ASEAN relations is now a focal point of US-China competition. So the strategic interest, competition, and the geopolitics are also important. But these factors are entwined with economics, trade, and investment. So I wonder how you just confine to economic explanation. And the second one is by the scope. Because your title is on ASEAN, but then later I found that you bring in